Conservatives decided to blame everybody but the murderer for the murder of 2 cops in New York City. Former New York Governor George Pataki said, quote, "Sickened by these barbaric acts, which sadly are a predictable outcome of divisive anti-cop rhetoric of Eric Holder and Mayor de Blasio." Whoa, you want to talk about low? Blaming public officials who care about justice for the acts of a murderer. Imagine if the situation was reversed and people on the left said that about people on the right. Oh my God, everybody would flip out and everybody would immediately denounce the people who made the comments. But when the situation is reversed, it's the norm. It's the norm that these right-wing commentators, these right-wing pundits and politicians, they're all lining up to blame Bill de Blasio, President Obama, Eric Holder, and Al Sharpton for a murderer's actions. Now, National Review editor Rich Lowry, it's going to get worse and worse as we go along here. In de Blasio's New York City, people reportedly cheering the murder of police officers. Yes, you nailed it, buddy. Fox host Stacey Dash said, quote, "These murderers are the natural result of the jihad on cops that Al Sharpton and Bill de Blasio have called for. They should be held accountable." So again, very clearly saying that these guys are responsible for the murder, for a crazy person murdering police officers. She's not done yet. She tweets at Bill de Blasio and says, "He has no business being at this press conference and should resign before the end of the year. Hashtag NYPD, hashtag hypocrite. Stay classy." Dana Loesch, the conservative commentator, said, quote, "Many of us join the NYPD in turning our backs on de Blasio." Way to have unity after a tragedy, right? They always scream at liberals, don't politicize something after it happens. We need to be united. Don't discuss anything political. Just come together. When they feel like they can blame liberals, though, for anything after a circumstance, they immediately do it. Whatever happened to unity? Now all of a sudden it's turn our backs on the mayor, as if the mayor, again, supports murder. A police association in New York. Wow. Quote, "The blood of 2 executed police officers is on the hands of Mayor de Blasio. May God bless their families and may they rest in peace." Joe Walsh, the former conservative politician. Bill de Blasio, quote, "This is an attack on all of us." No, it's not. It's an attack on our men and women in blue, and you are complicit in it. Stay classy, buddy. So, now, let's ask the uncomfortable questions here. Is it true that Bill de Blasio is anti-police, as these people are claiming? Well, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what Bill de Blasio has said. Let's go right to the horse's mouth here. By the way, it's not just Bill de Blasio being blamed. It's also Obama, Eric Holder, and Al Sharpton. Also the protesters, I should add. Protesters as well are being blamed. So de Blasio said of the shooting, quote, "A particularly despicable act that tears at the very foundation of our society. It's an attack on all of us. Our city is in mourning. Our hearts are heavy. We lost 2 good men who devoted their lives to protecting all of us." Yeah, it sounds like he's totally not on the side of the cops, man. You guys nailed it. Slate goes on to say the following, quote, "At no point, for example, has de Blasio attacked the New York City Police Department. Instead, he's called for improved policing, including better community relations and new training for de-escalation techniques." So stop and think about this. If you call for cameras on police officials to prevent abuse, which, by the way, it's a fact that it does. Studies have shown that. If you call for changing the drug laws so that you don't have police harassing certain members of the community, if you call for new training to do de-escalation to avoid violence, what the conservatives are saying is that means you're for violence. That means you're anti-police and you want people to do bad things to the police. So they flip the truth exactly on its head. Bill de Blasio has done nothing the entire time but call for justice. And if you listen to the conservatives, you would think that he's calling for injustice on a daily basis. They have it exactly backwards. So after the failure to indict Darren Wilson, let's dig a little deeper here because, again, another person they blame for this, Rudy Giuliani did specifically, President Obama they blamed. So I guess President Obama's rhetoric has been incredibly anti-police, right? Listen to what he said after the situation in Ferguson. Quote, "Law enforcement does a tough job. Understand, our police officers put their lives on the line for us every single day. They've got a tough job to do to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law." Yeah, again, sounds like he's very anti-cop, doesn't it? Now, when asked if African-American and Latino young people should fear the police, what did Eric Holder say? Because, again, Eric Holder was blamed for this as well. He said, quote, "I don't think that they should fear the police, but I certainly think that we have to build a better relationship between young people, people of color, and people in law enforcement." So calling for a better relationship in the right-wing bubble is akin to calling for the murder of police officers. Even Al Sharpton, who was also blamed for this, said after the Ferguson grand jury, so a while ago, he said, quote, "We are not anti-police. If our children are wrong, arrest them. Don't empty your gun and act like you had no other way." He couldn't be any more clear. Quote, "We are not anti-police." Now remember, that wasn't even after this cold-blooded murder of these two police officers. That was after the Ferguson grand jury. But still, the people in the right come out and they scream about how the liberals want the murder of police officers. Now, let me give you just one more here because this is very important. After the murder of these cops, Eric Garner's mother, whose son was murdered, or at least there was manslaughter committed against him by a police officer in Staten Island, and that guy got no punishment, mind you. But even Eric Garner's mother came out and said, quote, "I'm standing here in sorrow over losing those two police officers. Two police officers lost their lives senselessly." The family of Michael Brown said, quote, "We reject any kind of violence directed towards members of law enforcement." So you tell me, I just gave you the actual quotes of the people who supposedly are to blame for murder. You tell me if it really sounds like they're supporting murder. And just like I said yesterday, I want to repeat this again because I think this is an incredibly important point. What all these people who were blamed for this should say, they should say to the conservatives, how dare you? No, how dare you say that I support murder when I'm simply calling for justice, I'm calling for accountability, and I'm calling for it across the board. So you see how angry you are at the cold-blooded murder of two police officers? Our point is maybe you should also be angry at the Eric Garner situation, and you should call for justice there. We want justice across the board. You only want it when it's politically convenient to your ideology, when it supports the cops. But when it comes to supporting black people, all of a sudden, you don't give a shit about justice. It's amazing to me that they've managed to flip the truth exactly on its head when the people who were calling for justice all along are now being maligned as if they support murder. To call for body cameras on police officers, to call for an end to the drug war, to call for communities to police themselves and have programs to get people from the community in the police department. To say that that is equal to supporting murder is disingenuous and absolutely ridiculous.